graders. Hi, second graders. This is Miss Kish. This is your science lesson video. I'm going to go ahead and make the screen bigger. Hang on just a second. Okay, so second graders, today we are doing a couple of different things. The first thing we're going to do is read about a real person who studies the earth, what the earth is made of, and how the earth changes, okay? After that, we're going to talk about some things to review what we've been learning in this science unit, all right? So this says Martha M. Godchaux. Martha Godchaux was born in 1941. She studied for a long time to be a geologist. A geologist is a person who studies the materials that make up the earth and the changes in those materials over time. Martha is a special kind of geologist called a volcanologist who studies volcanoes. That could be your job when you're a grown-up. Wouldn't that be so fun to study volcanoes? Martha works at Mount Holyoke College in Massachusetts as a professor of geology. She teaches geology to students and takes them on trips to study mountains and active volcanoes. She also works with geologists from other colleges to share and learn new ideas. Martha has investigated, that means studied, mountains and volcanic areas in many parts of the United States. She is studying the Snake River Plain in Idaho for a special kind of volcanic activity called hotspots. She is very interested in observing natural changes in the Earth's surface and finding ways to predict rapid changes caused by volcanoes. Predict means know what's going to happen. Besides studying volcanic areas, Martha is especially interested in studying mountains on opposite sides of the United States. She is interested in studying the active mountains in the west and the older inactive mountains in the east. She also enjoys activities that help her with mountain climbing skills, such as running and biking. So, being a geologist is a job, a certain kind of scientist, right? And then she studies volcanoes as part of being a geologist. She also teaches college students. So that sounds pretty cool. Second graders, when you do your seesaw activity, you're going to think about what you might want to learn about if you were a geologist, okay? I'm going to pause for just a minute. We're going to keep talking about kinds of land and water. Okay, so second graders, we have been learning about kinds of land and kinds of water, just like a geologist would learn about, right? So let's take a look at some of the kinds of land and water that we've been learning about, okay? And then this will come in handy later when you're doing your seesaw activity. Okay, first we have a hill. We learned the action looks like this, or the motion for a hill, right? It says they're high ground, they're lower than a mountain, they're kind of land. They're often round on the top and often covered in plants like grasses, maybe trees. Okay, next are mountains, right? Mountains are steep, so we go like this. Mountains are high, steep features of the earth that rise above the land around them. A mountain can stand by itself, or it can be part of a group of mountains. That's called a mountain range. We don't have mountains near where we live, but there are some mountains east of us called the Appalachian Mountains. When I lived in Virginia, I lived near the Appalachian Mountains. And then in the west, there are mountains called the Rocky Mountains. Other mountains too, but those are two of the most kind of well-known, biggest ranges of mountains in the United States. Okay, next, here's our flat land. Do you remember what this is called? These are the plains. They're large, mostly flat land. Many kinds of grasses grow on the plains with just a few trees. A lot of the trees on the plain grow by rivers. That's where they can get their water from. Okay, so sometimes the plains are called grasslands because it's land that's covered in grass, right? This is where lots of farming is in the United States. There aren't trees that you have to dig up, and the land is already flat, which is great for farming. Okay, plateau. A plateau looks like this, right? A rise or a hill with steep sides and a flat top. Plateaus are often found in the west or in the desert. Okay, this one definitely looks like desert land with only a few plants, right? and kind of that deserty kind of color, soil. Our last landform is a valley. A valley, I kind of make that V shape, right? V for valley. Valleys are low landforms that are found between hills and mountains. So in the back of this picture, if you look back here, you can see the mountains, and then the valley is the low land in the middle. Often there are rivers in a valley because the water or the melting snow is flowing down the hill or down the mountain, and it's gathering at the bottom and making maybe a lake or maybe a river. Okay, let's talk about some water. Okay, here comes ponds. Ponds are small, they're shallow, they're bodies of water, they're surrounded by land. Okay, they form maybe in low spots in the land, and that water fills in the low spot. They're smaller than lakes, they're more shallow than lakes, and definitely than oceans, right? They often have lots of plants and animals, and they are fresh water. Ponds have fresh water. Okay. Rivers are large streams of water that flow downhill. They cause slow changes in the Earth's surface. We're going to talk about that in a minute. They can form valleys or canyons. Okay. Oceans are the largest bodies of water on Earth. They have salt water instead of fresh water, and they cover most of the Earth's surface. Okay, most of the Earth is covered in oceans. Next is streams. Stream is like a river, but it's smaller. Okay, streams could start in mountains. They're flowing. They might be, sometimes they're small, or there's like an empty space where the stream would be. And then when it rains or when snow melts, then the stream fills in, okay, when there's more water. Sometimes, and also many streams flow together to make a river. Okay, what's this one? This one is a lake. Lakes are bodies of water surrounded by land. They're bigger than ponds. They're smaller than oceans. We have some really big ones around our state, right? Some of the biggest lakes actually in the world, the Great Lakes, like Lake Michigan or Lake Huron, Lake Superior. Okay, but there's also lots of smaller lakes, and Michigan has lots of smaller lakes. We call them inland lakes that are in the Mitten or in the Upper Peninsula, right? Houghton Lake or Gun Lake. Those are examples of lakes too. That was the last one. All right, so second graders, we have talked about geologists who study the materials that make up the earth, like rocks or soil or sand. We've talked about kinds of land and kinds of water. The last thing I want to talk about are the ways that the surface of the earth can change. We talked about slow changes. Wind can be a slow change on earth, right? It can blow on something. It can have pieces of sand that rub up against kinds of land and wear it away or break off small pieces. Water is a way that land can change. It can change land by breaking off small pieces or wearing it away and carrying that soil down the river. Remember, we talked about the muddy, was it called Big Muddy, the Missouri River that says so much dirt and soil that it's moving away, right? We talked about some glaciers and ice that can cause slow changes to the earth, that can carve out pieces of the land and leave low-lying areas. Or like when we did the ice on our sand mountain, it kind of carved away pieces of the land. We also talked about some fast changes to the land. We talked about landslides, where maybe it has rained a lot and the soil is washing away. And instead of a slow change, a lot of soil is washing away or moving at one time or moving pretty quickly. We talked about earthquakes. We learned how the earth is made up of plates, and the plates bump into each other and move away and slide against each other, and that can cause earthquakes that can make fast changes to the land. And then we talked about volcanoes, where some of those plates are meeting, right? They might bump, make mountains. Lava or magma pushes up. It comes out as lava. Lava can come out quickly and make quick changes. It can come out slowly and make slow changes. And it can even make new land. We learned about in Hawaii, right? How it's adding more land as that lava is cooling down. Whew! We learned a lot in science, didn't we, friends? You have one last activity to finish up in Seesaw, learning about kinds of land and kinds of water. Great job.